Now, there was a pregnant pause there. I don't think both our viewers heard it, Pat, but there was a voice saying this was a recording. So
Yeah.
I had to wait till she'd finished. How
Yes.
are you with this kind of technology, by the way? Are you into these voices that
Jude,
speak to you, even you don't ask
no,
them
no,
to?
no, no, no. Good God, the height of technology for me was smoke signals. Once they start going into machines and all. Jude, I started as a journalist, and the height of technology back then was when you got two bits of white paper and put a carbon paper between them. That was your copy. That was the height of technology.
Very well.
And when hey Jude, keep saying I was a journalist for all my adult working life, and there was no mobile phones, no internet, no Instagram, no social media, no Facebook. Yeah, you keep on going, whatever ones you want to name yourself. Back then it was a phone, and sometimes even it was on a desk and a landline, and you typed it up on a typewriter,
The old
and
days.
the old days.
Did you wear a little green shade as the editor?
And I had a wee green lamp. No, but it was fabulous. But I haven't said that, Jude. Half the time back then, you see, the world was a different place. There was no such thing as social media. So a lot of time when people got their paper on a Friday, they hadn't seen the news. So there you go.
That's right. I was watching a very interesting thing on YouTube last night. A bunch of psychiatrists, my daughter put me onto because it's part of this course she's following. A bunch of psychiatrists talking about the social media. Really interesting. Really interesting. I'll just give you one example. They said, from the Middle Ages on, right down to the 20th century even, when groups wanted to get together, teenagers say, they got out of the house and they all congregated in front of buildings or down alleys or whatever. Nowadays, they almost choose to gather online.
Yeah.
That's their meeting point. And a lot of them prefer that rather than the face-to-face. And I can see why, but that has to have some kind of profound effect on people eventually, don't you think?
I'll even name the guy. There's a guy called Frank McGurk who used to be in contact with me. And Frank lives in a wee place called St. Johnson, which is only a couple of miles up the road. Well, Frank was telling a story that every morning he used to go down, he'd get a loaf, his eggs, and a pint of milk, whatever it was, and a breakfast for himself. And I think he used to get them fresh every morning. And he said there was bus stops along the way because there's no secondary school in St. Johnson. Some kids would be going to Rafo, some would be going to Letterkenny, and some would be going to maybe Antiderry. And he says years ago, he used to see all the boys and girls chatting and sort of courting each other, looking, all interacting, and he says all teenagers do. And he says he noticed a growing trend in recent years that one day he went past, and he noticed not a girl was talking to a fella or a fella talking to a girl. They were all on their phones playing either games or on social. And he says that cannot be good for society.
Well, this was the conclusion these psychiatrists came to. They spent most of their time warning against, not warning, but certainly aware of the terrible dangers. And they connected it with all these various right-wing leaders that have sprung up. If you think of Trump, he's tied in entirely to Twitter. I mean, you say Trump equals Twitter, Twitter equals Trump.
He had 93 million followers at one stage, too.
But the thing is this, there also is the positive side. You and I wouldn't be doing these Zoom chats if it wasn't the internet. I wouldn't have a blog site if it wasn't.
Social
media. Say the world's better off if it didn't have it.
Well, the social media has democratized a lot of things, but the downside, look at Bolsonaro in Brazil, Trump in America, Orban in Hungary, Boris Johnson, the rise of these ridiculous populist, authoritarian, that's unbelievable. And the intolerance is out there, it's unbelievable.
But Pat, I know, I recognize the danger. I think I need to be persuaded that that's directly connected in all cases with social media.
Well, you've got a point, but it's an element of it, Jude.
Did you remember the time when horror comics was going to rock young people's heads?
Yeah, well, I have to agree. Somebody said to me some time back, there was no social media when Hitler came around, or when Franco came around, or or whatever. So I do take the point.
Yeah. We're always been afraid of the new thing. Used to be movies, and my mother used to think movies were terrible, filthy, dirty things. And then television was the kids in front of the goggle box staring vacantly at it. After that, it was games. They keep on having anything new in terms of technology. I think people tend to respond with a negative attitude to it. I think there's a point in that, but at the same time, look at wonderful things. I can imagine my life be reft of not meeting with you twice a week like this.
Absolutely, Jude.
And yours.
I must meet with myself twice a week, and it's as good as you say it is.
Okay. Enough already. Let's talk about the pressing political situation. I hope we don't cover the same ground as we did the last day, but you contacted me, Pat, and you give me the name Jim Allister, and you asked several questions. So what I'll do is I'll call out each question. You can tell me what you think, and then I'll tell you how wrong you are. Right. Jim Allister, your first question you asked me was, what is he offering as an alternative to the protocol?
Yeah, Jude, you see, here's a point. The reason I asked the question is I can't answer it. I was sat in, was it Newton Ards he was on Friday night, and there's about 1,000 people there. And all he did was have a go at the nationalist community, Sinn Féin, and anybody that signs up he says basically anybody in the DUP that signs up as long as the protocol remains is a traitor and all the rest of it. But I had no stage that Jim Allister Jude say anything about what he is putting in his place or what alternative he's offering. Basically, he seems to think that the nationalist community in the North, A, doesn't exist, B, has no rights, and B, should know their place, or C, should know their place. And, I've yet to hear him saying, and he was asked, I remember seeing one night in the Nolan show, he was asked about the 1916 Rising. He said it was a grubby little sign and nobody should bother celebrating and so on. So he seems to think that he's living somewhere in the 1940s, unionist-controlled statelet that it was Northern Ireland, where they were 60% of it or 65% of the population, and the other 35% knew their place and weren't going to. Jude, it's 2021. And I keep repeating it. Time has caught up with unionism.
Well, I viewed that clip you're talking about. Was it 18 minutes or something of Jim Allister talking to the people?
I think you sent it to me, and I sat and watched it last night.
Yeah. But you notice that he was he gave an answer to the question, what can we do about the protocol? He started off by saying, well, we don't deal with it or get rid of it by putting it in place. He says we've got to bring it down. So his answer was, don't appoint a first minister. He's telling the DUP, don't appoint a first minister, and tell them that either they get rid of the protocol or Stormont's going to be finished. Now, he didn't say what he would put in the place of the protocol, but I think, honestly, he doesn't think that's his job. His job, as he sees it, is working on getting rid of the partition of the UK.
Yeah.
And the problem then is the EU's problem, Ireland's problem, in terms of what do you do if the protocol is removed.
Yeah. But Jude, is
that not fair enough, Pat?
That is, yeah. He's not offering a solution. But Jude, you can't this guy comes along and says all these things and basically tells there's total contradiction in what he's saying as well, Jude. They're saying the reason Stormont isn't working is because Sinn Féin don't want it to work, and they wanted to stabilise Northern Ireland.
That's right.
And they wanted to prove that Northern Ireland is ungovernable. And then, in the same breath, they're saying, if we don't get what we want, we're going to pull down Stormont. Now, Jude, gone work. There's no that famous American expression, "Go figure." Well, here I can't figure out. Either A, they want to keep the institutions up to prove that Northern Ireland is a stable place and can be a stable place, or they want to bring it down. But they can't ride the same horse, two different ways.
Well, Jim Allister did say, and I would tend to agree with him on this, that the protocol is helping to create and sustain a united economic Ireland. And that's a precursor of, it makes it so much easier to go then from that to politically united Ireland. Yeah. So I would have some sympathy with him in that. I understand it. But I mean, there's all sorts of answers to that as well. Such as, what about democracy? For a start. But Jim didn't seem too interested in that. The second question you asked about it, Pat, was this: does he have anything to offer the nationalist community?
No.
Nothing.
He hasn't. I think he sees Northern Ireland as our country, and our country doesn't include nationalists unless they are pro-British. And Jude, if you listen to any of the statements this last while, there's talk about betrayal, about enough is enough. You hear all the same expressions, and and so on, and they said our country, and they refer to the people of Northern Ireland. Jude, let's get this on the record. I have yet to meet any nationalist who is in the least bit upset by the protocol. I actually met a guy this morning, a dairy guy. He's involved in business in dairy, and he says the protocol is the best thing that's happened to him. He says his business down south has taken off like a rocket, and he says he gets a lot of stuff in. I think a lot of it from China, and he says it comes into Northern Ireland, and he can go any direction into Europe, down south, over to Britain, any which way he wants. And he says he's never had it so good.
Yeah.
Now, I presume that there are others. That's anecdotal, and I don't know too many people. But this guy says it's actually working extremely well for him. Now, I have yet to meet a single, and I mean, I can state hand on heart, I have not met one single nationalist person who feels the least bit discommoded by the protocol.
Well, the protocol does seem to be working for business, because I saw figures recently, and they said that if I forget which way they were talking about, was it north to south or south to north, but it was up 40% on this time last year. But then again, that's a bit tricky because
I know.
But the sort of general official numbers were cited as being very praiseworthy. And again, I haven't found I asked you this question before. You do your shopping about dairy. And you do. I imagine. Have you noticed stuff not being on the shelves? Or
I possibly should correct you there. Rosie does her shopping. There's no point in me trying to take credit for the shopping, because it just doesn't happen.
Well, has she complained to you then?
No,
because
not
I'm
at all.
sure she would if there was.
No, she said no. It's Jude. I have to be honest now. I remember in January she says, "Yeah, there's definitely some, but there was a lot of bulk buying and panic buying then, because remember there."
Oh yeah, toilet paper and all that.
Toilet paper, and there was a lot of other stuff went off. But Jude, I think all that's sort of been sorted now, and so on. So Jude, no, I don't. I have to be honest. I do recall her saying around about January, maybe early February, that she could see some of the shelves were not as full. But Jude, I think that's long gone at this stage.
I think certainly I think for most people, any shortages or changes are very minor. I think for business, it's pretty damn good. I guess there's more form filling, bringing stuff from Britain to here. But I don't know if it's worth, dying in a ditch over. The second, you said that Jim Allister has nothing to offer the nationalist community. I think he has. I'm not talking about that economic moving to political, although I think that is true actually. But I think he has he does a valuable service to the nationalist community, because he shows us unionism without any makeup.
No
messing. This is unionism.
Well, I've often thought that as well, and in fact, But Jude, I was sitting watching it, and the thing in Newton Ards on Friday night, there was about 1,000 people there, and there was one woman. She was in. She says, "I am prepared to die for the protocol." And I thought, good God, Mrs. You need to grow up a wee bit. The protocol, Jude. The protocol. Hey, I don't know how often you have to. One of the things he said. What was it? Dublin's choice: peace or the protocol or peace. Now, that's a straightforward threat. You can look at it like that. And the whole, aim of loyalism is to shift the blame onto Dublin, not London. And you can see it, but Jude, it's beyond dishonest and it's beyond stupidity. Here's the reality. George Hamilton, not George Hamilton, what do you call him? The former Chancellor, George Osborne. He is on the record as saying that the stupidity of the DUP led directly to the imposition of the protocol. It's on the record. I'm not making this up. Anybody wants to check it, go on. And he says the stupidity of the DUP basically they got what they deserved and so on. And he said the economic situation is heading towards Dublin and the politics will follow. Leo Varadkar, when he was Prime Minister, did not sign the protocol. Boris Johnson signed the protocol with the EU. Those are facts that, it might be unpalatable to loyalism, but it wasn't Dublin signed it. It was Boris Johnson signed it. So if they want to blame somebody, look across the channel and say to all those English nationals and Boris Johnson, you're the people who sold us out, not Dublin. And Jude, this sort of thing, blaming Dublin, like Leo Varadkar should not have signed, or batted for his own country. He should have looked after us. Go get real.
Yeah, his own state, you mean, of course, Pat. But you asked a third question. You said, does he think nationalism is going to start doffing its cap again, like many had to do in the 40s or the 50s?
Yeah.
Do you think he thinks that? He doesn't.
I think he does.
He doesn't.
No, Jude. Hey, if you watch some of his stuff, Jude, it's unapologetic. To use your term, unvarnished loyalism without the makeup, and it's there's an arrogance there, there's an intolerance there, and he can sue me. I think there's a bigotry there.
I don't think he really believes that he hopes for a time when nationalists will doff their cap. I don't know how you doff your cap anyway. What is doff? Doff?
The old peasant, when he used to meet the landlord, he'd go,
tug the forelock, I thought there was.
No. It was the old cap.
So if you hadn't got a cap, you tugged the forelock. And if you had a cap, you doffed it. Right. Okay. I think he doesn't give a damn.
Excuse me, you're supposed to be the intellectual here, not me. So
just checking. I think he's not looking for us to doff our cap or tug our forelock to him. I think he just doesn't want us to betray him and his with our efforts for a united Ireland.
Yeah, but Jude,
as he would say it, that's a betrayal. That's a betrayal.
We do not live in a silo. We live in a community. He seemed to think that the only people who have a right to express their point of view, who have a right to say what they want, are the unionist people. Jude, like Brandon Lewis came on the other day, Leo Varadkar, he says unhelpful and unadvised, the comments he made about he would want to see a united Ireland in his lifetime. I sort of listened to that and going, how arrogant is that? We have been, as nationalists, we have had it rammed down our throat about this, our precious union, about maintaining the union, about having to live in a state where it was artificially created, and so on. I have no intention of putting a gun to anybody's head, but if anybody's saying to me that it's some way ill-advised or unhelpful, or that the nationalists shouldn't be allowed to speak out or say publicly that they wish to see United Ireland, I'm going, you've got to be kidding.
Well, Pat, I think, yes, I sort of agree with that. We'll come to Leo in a minute. But I do think that we should be grateful in a way to Jim Allister, because he's come clean. Many of the other unionists, like even the DUP, they haven't come clean. What they do is they complain about the protocol because they're saying, oh, it's economic. Look at that. All these forms have to fill in and so on. That's ridiculous. And it just doesn't make sense. Get rid of it. Jim Allister comes out and says, hardly even mentions the economic hardship. He just says, they're trying to put us into United Ireland by first creating an economic United Ireland. And I think that's a fairly accurate analysis of the whole thing. Well, no, not quite, because the creation of the protocol was solely the work, not even of Boris Johnson. It was the work ultimately of the DUP, because DUP had there would have been no.
Yeah, they could have avoided the whole Irish thing. If they had supported a soft Brexit, they could have avoided all this.
Do you remember they sort of did a shepherd's crook around Theresa May's neck as she was about to make an announcement? And
on a Monday morning, she was literally going to sign a deal where there would be no protocol in Northern Ireland. And they insisted, because they wanted a hard Brexit, they wanted to support that and so on. So they pulled her out of the meeting.
Now they've got it. They can't stick it. Well, it's interesting times ahead. Do you think there's going to be trouble? I was mulling this over. Do you think there's going to be physical violence this summer?
I think it's a possibility, yeah. There's no doubt about that. But Jude, that I'm sitting, you see this thing all the time. Putz mentioned and various other. They're sort of saying, look, unless we get our way, it's going to be a long, hot summer. Jude, I regard that as and of course they're saying we want things to be peaceful, but there's a subliminal message going out there, and it's not very subliminal either. Unless we get our way, it could be a lot of trouble this summer. Well, my attitude to that, if you're going to threaten every time you don't. But by the way, Jude, here's the one thing I want to say before. See this idea, and the use of language in Northern Ireland really gets up my nose. You keep hearing it nonstop. This is an ongoing concession to nationalism. Jude, the word is rights, not concessions.
Well, as
if the people of Wales have a language act, and the people of Scotland have a language act, and it's considered a right in those places, why is it considered a concession that the people who live in Northern Ireland, the native people, if you want to use that term, and where we have an ancient language that we some way it's within the gift or the concession of unionists to give that to us, whereas surely it is our right. And by the way, Jude, the right to get divorced or have an abortion or to have single-sex marriage, if it applies in Britain, whether you agree with them or not, that's not my argument. Whether you agree with them, if we're supposed to be a part of the UK, how come they can decide for me, but not for decide somebody in Bristol? So in other words, they want to be part of the UK when it suits them, but not when it doesn't. So there's a total dichotomy, or whatever the word is you want to use, or total dishonesty or lack of integrity about unionism when it comes to their own interests.
Look, about your thing, Pat, briefly, but you were saying Jim Allister and company talk as though they talk about the people of Northern Ireland are outraged or whatever. Susan McKay has been on TV a couple of times. Susan McKay wrote that book about Northern Protestants. And she has another one now, very prescient, I thought, because she said it was, the title is Protestants on Shifting Ground. But she says that she's very struck by the fact that an awful lot of the Protestants she talked to were pretty relaxed about a united Ireland. If a majority wanted it, that's fine. They could.
No, Jude, I'm having to go.
Sorry, the way Jim Allister talks, it does sound as if everybody is as outraged as he is.
Yeah, Jude, that's the point. These people are sort of stirring up a lot of stuff that I think a lot of maybe ordinary people on both communities are sort of saying, look, hey, Jude, the constitutional position hasn't changed one iota. There's been no border pool. There doesn't look like there mightn't be one for 4 or 5 years at minimum. Nobody's in a rush. Nobody wants. But this constant sort of thing, hey, Jude, the protocol, they made something like a protocol that was never exist, where the EU and the UK collided in regard to all what after the Brexit was on the island of Ireland. That's where the problem is, and that's where the problem has to be sorted.
Okay, let's leave Jim Allister stewing in his own juice briefly, and let's move on to a second issue that you raised, Pat. You mentioned, you said, why did Leo V? I thought at first it was Leo V, and it was the Pope or something you were talking about. But why did Varadkar, Leo V, make his big speech about a united Ireland? I have the answer to that, Pat.
Go for it.
It's the election, stupid. It's the by-election in Bay, Dublin. What is it? Dublin South Bay or Bay South?
Dublin South, yeah.
Right, that's what it is.
Dublin Bay South, yeah.
Now, it's not that they're all rampant nationalists or Republicans in that particular constituency. He wants it as a kind of a background that people will think well of him. Because remember, he said the big thing he said was, I believe that there will be a united Ireland in my lifetime. 40 years. 40 years. Get out of it. So he's having it both ways, really. He's saying, with regard to United Ireland, yes, I'm for it. Yes, I believe in it. And at the same time, he's saying, United Ireland, no. Because it'll be sometime in my lifetime, but this isn't the best time. Probably, 30 years time, 25 years time, 40 years time. Anyway, that's my rant against him. Oh, the other thing is he was for setting up a Fine Gael branch in the north. Does that ring? Is that?
It's right up there with Michael Martin's Fianna Fáil. Fianna Fáil, they set up sort of a wing with the SDLP.
Yeah.
But Jude, so far, to put it mildly, it's been underwhelming.
I was going to say, have they got a branch in the north?
No, I think they sort of have, what would you say? They franchised out the Fianna Fáil to the SDLP. I think that's the way they see it working.
So they want,
brother parties or sister parties, depending on what gender you want to call these things.
That'd be like the fact that the SDLP are a sister party of the Labour Party in England.
Yeah, something along those lines. I think there's a sort of a tie-up between Colm Eastwood and Micheál Martin on various things.
I think actually that Leo is the reason he's spoken up the way he has, and the reason Leo or Micheál Martin has got his famous, what is it, Ireland Development Group or whatever, is that they know which way the wind's blowing. There's more. I've heard the phrase United Ireland more times in the last month than I've heard maybe in my lifetime before on the air. I mean, on TV or on radio. So I guess he's seeing which way the wind is blowing, and he wants to get a spake in there so that people won't mistake him for anything but a nationalist.
Well, Jude,
he wasn't really was behind before.
Of course, and Jude, here's the reality: the last opinion poll in the South had Sinn Féin on 34%, and Fine Gael on 24%. And Jude, Sinn Féin seem to be going north, and statistical terms, and some of the rest of them seem to be going south, which sends them a message. Plus, what's happening in the north is, by the way, did I digress a second? Somebody said, and I can't stand over this because I've never heard it, said, John Hume apparently said, I was on the record as saying that when parity was achieved in Northern Ireland, unionism would start devouring itself because it couldn't handle supremacy was the premise on which unionism was built. If he said that, it was actually a very, very astute observation. But anyway, getting back to the thing, basically last week, Varadkar came out. Now, see Fine Gael, when you consider the track record of Fine Gael, John Bruton particularly as a leader for years, and Taoiseach, like John Bruton would have been perfectly at home as a right-wing unionist or right-wing Tory and the shires in England. You know, so for Leo Varadkar as the current leader of Fine Gael, it shows the direction of travel in Irish politics when the leader of Fine Gael coming out with what he came out with last.
Pat, you mentioned that poll, 34% for Sinn Féin and 24% for Fine Gael, and a mere 20 for, and in fact that was up on their previous figure, 20% for Fianna Fáil. But they did a thing about the leaders, and Mary Lou came in last in that.
Yeah.
Now, I was surprised at that because during the election and after the election, I remember reading several pieces which spoke about how people who might not vote for Sinn Féin, but they said they would vote for Mary Lou. You know what I mean?
I think there's a simple explanation of that. See, down south, Mary Lou has never been in power. Micheál Martin has been Taoiseach for 2 years. Leo Varadkar has been Taoiseach and leader of the party for what, 5-6 years now. They've been in power. They've been at all the big press conferences. They've been in the White House. They've been Mary Lou's none of that sort of stuff. Her profile amongst a lot of people down south is actually quite well down the scale. You only get that sort of leadership bounce when you're in power and all that. And Micheál Martin has been Micheál Martin's been around. He's been a cabinet minister in various Fianna Fáil governments going back about 30 years.
But we're just talking about popularity here. And
popularity is also about your status and about Mary Lou is she's a lot of, when you're the leader, there's a lot of stuff you can give out when you're only a leader or in government. If Mary Lou was in government, I think, and things were going well, you'd see her status rocket up as well. So I wouldn't read a terrible lot into that.
Are you impressed by her as a communicator and a politician?
Yes and no. Sometimes I think she's an excellent communicator, but she got involved in a couple of rows with Leo Varadkar in the Dáil, which I thought, hey, come on, Mary Lou, you've got him on the ropes. Just stop now. But and she walked past him one day in the Dáil and said something apparently, and it's not the done thing. So but maybe it was just anger. I know, but Jude, I think she's on the right track, and I think she's very intelligent, and I think she's also a very, very good communicator. But sometimes remember an old judge told me one time, a good solicitor knows the questions to ask, but even more so knows the questions not to ask. And I think that's a lesson maybe Mary Lou should learn.
Yeah, there was an article on her in the Irish Times the other day, maybe even on Saturday, and it was a pretty negative one. It attacked her on grounds that, for example, she clearly came from a very middle class home, and that here she was, speaking up for the working people. I think the implication was that she was really condescending is what they're saying.
Yeah,
I think they're completely off there.
That's a ridiculous. Jude, that's the Dublin Four. You read that all the time. That's Irish Independent. Like, that's just sneer and smear.
Yeah. Okay. So you're happy with the leadership of Sinn Féin North and South, then, are you?
Well, the thing, Jude, if I was Sinner right now, I'd be more than happy. Everything's right now. Everything seems to be going very well for them. Jude, here's the point: they've never been in government in the Republic, and some of the mess ups and some of the things that have gone on in the recent years have pissed off a lot of people, particularly the younger generation. And it was Sinn Féin. They've got Pierce Doherty, Owen O'Brien, David Cullen, who are very, very astute, able politicians. And a lot of the debates, they are winning big time with a young cohort of people. And a lot of people are tired of the Micheál Martins and the Leo Varadkars and the Simon Coveys, who have been around for 20 years plus years. And I think the tide is turning. And we all say, and me and you've talked about this so often, the demographics in the North are also changing at a rapid pace.
Yeah. I heard, incidentally, Leo Varadkar responded to.
That really got to you, didn't it, Leo? Leo V.
It's very striking. Like, I assume you were talking about popes, but he said he came back when they criticized him for speaking at this sensitive time. Well, imagine doing this when unionism was in turmoil and crisis, etc.
Actually, he answered it very well.
He said, well, if I hadn't done it then, of course, it wouldn't be good to do it in October because, there'd be something happening then. It wouldn't be a good idea to mention it in May, say, because there'd be an election in the North. In other words, he said, there's no time, according to these people, according to anybody, that's a good time to speak of a united Ireland. But
he said it was wrong to mention it during Brexit. It was wrong to mention it when the DUP were in difficulties. It'd be wrong to mention it now because of the protocol. It'll be wrong to mention it next year because of the elections. And he says you could keep on going. When is the right time?
So he said, very important point. Very important point. It may not actually apply to him. I mean, what he says is so mild, really, when you unpack it. But I think that notion of saying no, don't speak up now, don't. I think that's.
I wrote this one down, Dr. Collins. Good man, Leo, for bringing up Irish unity when we are in the middle of a crisis. Who said that?
Doug Beattie.
Correct. Go to the top of the class. But, that's the sort of thing. Jude, that's where I think a lot of people like me get annoyed. I am not. You don't stir the pot, but this sort of thing that unionists have every right, and I support them 100%, to mention the union. They're quite entitled to it. That's all right. But see this sort of thing that every time anybody in the nationalist community wants, that's provocation. That's unhelpful. It's ill-advised. It's divisive. Dude, that day's got to go.
Well, you have to admit, Pat, it's a good trick.
Yeah,
it's a good trick because a lot of nationalists feel, oh, well, I'd be stirring the pot if I started talking about a united Ireland. And I'll be frank with you. If I was meeting with people I knew were unionist, I wouldn't raise the issue of.
No, neither would I. No.
Well, maybe they.
But hold on, I'll back you up, Dr. Collins. If they raised the issue of the union with me, I would have no bother. But I certainly would not be bad-mannered enough.
I agree with you there. Okay, let's move away from this messy, corrupt, bullying, outrageous world of politics and move to the sweet-smelling world of sport.
Yay!
You may have noticed there's a football tournament on at the moment. Mind you, Ireland North and South miserably failed to get to the bloody thing. But given that, we are faced with a number of teams, and you asked me the question, who is going to win the Euros? Now, you didn't put a question mark at the end of it. You put an exclamation mark at the end of it. So you must know the answer. What's the answer?
That was just, I was typing on my phone. Jude, no, I thought Andy Murray, well, he has a farmer tennis, maybe he's still playing, I'm not certain. But I thought he'd come out with a great comment. He says, he set it all up. They were lucky to hang on for a draw. And he says, I'm talking about England here, not Scotland. It was
very good, very good. Well, it wasn't far off. It wasn't far off.
I was dead right. Now the fella, is it Billy Gilmore, the guy who?
Oh yes, I hear he's injured.
No, he's not injured. He's got COVID, or he was in contact with some. He was in contact with somebody who's COVID. Jude, this is the guy. England had this sort of Declan Rice, Jack Grealish, and all these stars in midfield. This week, he only turned 20 last week. The 19-year-old, in other words, just the guy ran the show from the midfield, and he was superb. If some of the boys, Grealish and these guys are worth 100 million, I don't know what that wee guy is worth, because he's already. Several people have said he's absolutely outstanding.
Well, it'd be a sore loss against Croatia, but
absolutely,
But the way that team played, they weren't. I wasn't struck by stars in it. I was very struck by their organisation.
Absolutely,
I wouldn't put it past them that they would beat Croatia.
Exactly.
That
wee guy was the playmaker, and he was the French side of Kante. And Golo and Kante, the brilliant guy who came to Leicester, and they won the Premiership, and then he went to Chelsea, and they won the European Cup. He's the main man. Well, that wee fella Gilmore, he was brilliant, absolutely. No, he got very tired towards the end, but I watched the entire match, and I thought, Jesus, England's getting very lucky here, coming towards the end.
I hope you weren't cheering against them. Anyway, let's tell me who's going to win. Who's going to win the Euros? That's the key question.
No. I know who I'd like to see one now. I really like Belgium. I like the way they play. I like some of the players they've got. They've got real sort of Kevin De Bruyne. I think is a brilliant player, and what he call Hazard, the two Hazard brothers. And I like I like the style of play. I'd like to see them winning. Now England, I think maybe Scotland peaked against England. They always do, but England has enough talent now. Whether this one. And of course, Jude, you always, and I'm rambling a bit here, but you always see the French, jeepers, if the ball goes over the back, it's Mbappe, jeepers, Jude, I don't think the Flying Scotsman, the train could catch him once he gets going. He's an unbelievable athlete.
Yeah, well, it is a team of Belgium of great stars, being wonderful players, but I'm not sure they're as organised or cohesive a group as it could be. If you go to Paddy Power has Belgium, I think it is, at 7-2, and they've got Germany at 6-1, and who's the other one? Germany and Italy at 6-1. I didn't look beyond that. I'd say one of those three: Italy, Germany, or Belgium. And I'll tell you who my money would be on if I was going to. If I was a gambling man, which, as you know, of course, I'm not. Not in exceptional circumstances. I would put my money in Germany. I was hugely impressed with the way they played the last game.
And you always have to admit, Japers, they are so organised. Now, and the old Germans, they are always there or thereabouts in these tournaments. They seem to have got the mentality of winning. And see, when it comes to a penalty shootout, do they ever lose?
Well, I like the way they play. There's an assurance about their play. It's like watching a good politician talking in a debate. You're relaxed. You know that the guy is going to handle himself well, deal with problems logically. He'll show a good face. That's always a feeling I have. Well, certainly after that last match that I had with the Germans. Every time they got the ball, you felt, I'm not worried that somebody's going to take it off. No, he's not. He's going to pass it to somebody,
I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to politics. But you always had that feeling with him. No matter what curved ball was thrown at him during a debate, it had all thought through. The Germans, see when it comes to football, they don't have the best players in the world. They don't even have close to the best players in the world, but they have the best team in the world most of the time.
Amazing. But are you enjoying it, Pat? Are you enjoying the Euros?
Some of them are good. I see them. I was sitting having a glass of wine on Friday night watching England-Scotland, and it was superb.
Right.
And the France-Germany game was very, very good. A couple of games have been absolutely excellent. Now, Jeepers, there was one, I can't remember what it was. It was as boring as Madame. You know, Sean Coyle of BBC fame says, "Gone." He said on social media, "Gone, somebody ring me. This match is so bad."
Yeah. Still, I think it's getting better as it goes on. And incidentally, is there a Wimbledon tournament this year?
I presume there is. Yeah.
And then there's the.
It usually starts in July, August. Say again.
Olympic Games.
That's going to hit, but there's some big controversy about that.
There is certainly. There's it's bad news in terms of COVID, but they're insisting on going on with it, and they may not have spectators. But as we've seen with football, you don't have to have a stadium full of people. I mean, it helps, but you can do it.
No, I was listening to the 1 o'clock news in RT, and all I heard was people will be told not to shout out loud. So, Jude, if you set a world record, don't shout.
Well, that's what the footballers do whenever they scored, and they go like this here, you know.
But I was thinking,
what is it about sport, Pat? What is it about sport that makes it so enjoyable? Is it men? It's mainly men that follow sport. I know we're not supposed to say that, and I know you've got women who are umpires, women who are commentators and chairpersons and all the rest. And women's football and so on. But somehow sport tends to be a male obsession. Why are we so? Why are people? All right, women can be obsessed with it too. Why are people so obsessed with? And why do they take sport so seriously? And it's only a game, as they say.
Well, you know, I remember somebody saying, when England's playing Scotland or Ireland, it's almost taken the place of war. You know, it's national pride, and our warriors are better than your warriors. Because you know it's a feat of, and it's someone innate in the human being. Hey, you see, when you see a beautiful runner, somebody, or see a footballer, see that famous definition. When you see somebody doing something that you can't do. Gary Lineker told a brilliant story about Diego Maradona the other day. He said they were messing around and somewhere before the start of a match, and he said, "Maradona, take the ball as hard up in the air as he could put it," and he says, and he did it 13 times, one after the other. He says, "High up, caught it, high up, caught it." He says the next day in training, they all got together. He says, the most Maradona moved, he says, was about 3 feet. He says the next day in training, they said they would all try it. He says they never got past 3. And by the time they kicked up in the air in the third time, they were about 30 yards away from where they started. And he says that, and you could see that he was in awe and the respect and all. And Jude, I think it's this thing that there's something, why do we look at people to be tall and graceful and as the aspiration of most people, that they want to be like the athlete who looks so superb. Nobody wants to be a wee short fat person. No, but by the way, it's not like, by the way, speaking as a fat person myself, don't anybody jump on anything. Like, we all want to be. There's always an aspiration to be something that we're not, isn't that it?
Well, I think the reason I would support football, and I've argued this with people, is that I think it's very near an art form. Yeah. And you only have to go back to that game now, and this is counterintuitive, as they say. I was cheering for Scotland too, but in the early stages, John Stones, the centre back, went up for a corner, and they played it back in slow motion. My God, it was a thing of beauty. Now he put it against the bar, but he went up so. I mean, his arms were. It was like a prima donna doing a spin in the air.
It was absolutely. I agree 100%. How he got up that high, and I know, and Jude, had there been a still camera to catch that at its apex, Jude, it was a magnificent leap that a human being could do that. Like, Jude, I'd be lucky to get about 3 inches off the floor these days if I jump. He must have been several feet in the air. Oh yeah, it was a superb leap.
And why I think that's why we like sport, football. When you see somebody doing something enormously well, if it was that guy that was the sprinter that broke all the records, where he would run and tap his chest when he's halfway, and waving stuff. You just say,
you see
Muhammad Ali
boxing,
boxing, you know, just
yeah.
figures of grace and supremacy and all sorts of things. There's the excitement of the clash of sides and clash of competitors, but I think it goes beyond that. It's just the sheer beauty of it at times.
Well, you see, when Muhammad Ali took boxing to, you know, he turned it not into a science, he turned it into, as you say, an art. Like the Ali shuffle, the way he rope the dope. He actually tried to hit me, and then he just moved his, you know, and like people couldn't hit him, and he was that fast, and he turned something. It was grace and dignity and whatever you want to do. And so, and Jude, as you say, when you see a beautiful bit of football, it is an art form.
I must say, okay, I will better end here. But at times I envy these guys, and I'm sure if I wasn't much of a footballer. Well, it was okay, but I wasn't anything to write home about. But I do envy these guys. Like I was looking at all those guys on the English team, and every single one of them is a multimillionaire.
Absolutely.
And they've been made it multimillionaire by doing the thing they love best.
Yeah.
And they keeping their bodies in just top-notch shape.
And
that itself must be a pleasure.
What do you call him? Marcus Rashford. He's only 22 or something, and he's someone worth something like 40-50 million, and he's only 22. But Jude, here I'll leave you that. Here's one to just leave you on a depressing note. F. Scott Fitzgerald. I can't remember the name of the story, but anyway, I remember reading it, and it was about an American footballer, and he got 31 or something. The rest, this famous sentence was always the rest of his life was an anticlimax. In other words, he could never get back what he had. Yeah. And you know that song by Bruce Springsteen, Glory Days, you know about the boy, he said he was at a bar someday and he was walking out and this guy was walking in and he went to high school with him. And he said they went back in and had a few drinks. And I presume some sort of autobiography and some shiver for him. And he says all he could talk about was glory days.
Oh, God, that's true. That's true. That's true. Someone else said youth is wasted on the young. Wasted on the young.
On that note.
Okay, Pat.
Good luck, Jude.
Thank you. Thank you. See ya.
Thank you. See ya.